You're listening to Reap Sow, dispatches from the front lines of food, farming, and the environment. I'm your host, Teresa Katsarillas. Belén Delgado is a fisherman in rural Mexico, and one spring about 15 years ago, he made a discovery that would change his life. A giant bank of callo de hacha lay just off the coast of his small town. Callo is a rare and very expensive kind of shellfish, and Belén knew they were worth millions. Pretty soon, everyone wanted a piece of the action. This week, we're taking a deep dive into the chaos that followed Belén's discovery. This story was produced by Esther Honig, an investigative journalist who's been working with FERN for years. FERN first published it in 2022 in partnership with the podcast Snap Judgement. I'll let their host, Glenn Washington, take it from here.
We began in Sinaloa, Mexico. On the edge of the Pacific Ocean, there's a small fishing town without a single traffic light and hardly any paved streets. Reporter Esther Honig takes us to an empty beach, shrouded in fog. Snap Judgement.
Aquí donde revienta la ola esa, donde revientan, de ahí para allá había callo de hacha. Toda esa área, todo.
In jeans and flip-flops, Belén Delgado points to an area on the horizon where he found something that would change his life and the lives of everyone he knew.
Pues, la verdad, uno de los mejores capítulos de mi vida fue vivirlo.
Well, the truth is, it was one of the best chapters of my life.
Para mi familia.
For my family.
Para mi pueblo.
For my town.
It was one evening, 15 years ago. Belén sat with a good friend out in front of his home, and they chatted about the catch that day.
Y mandábamos a la gente a pescar.
We'd send people out to fish and they wouldn't bring back anything.
¿Qué estaba pasando?
In fact, many would say, "What's going on?" And it's like, well, who knows? There aren't any fish.
No hay.
There was a time when the red snapper and sea bass were over 5 feet long, and the schools of fish were so massive. There'd be so many hundreds of them splashing and jumping around, it looked like the ocean was boiling. But the truth was, the catch had been lousy for a long time now.
La verdad sí es muy triste ver cuando ya no.
It's really sad when a species that the fishermen rely on disappears. It's a punch in the gut to those who make most of their money from fishing. They're always the most affected.
That night, as Belén sat on the porch, he told his friend something he'd recently heard from another fisherman. This fisherman worked on a large shrimping boat, and he did what he always does. He dropped the nets and dragged them across the ocean floor. But when he pulled them up, he noticed something strange caught in the webbing.
Si arrastraban los redes.
One and then another callo de hacha fell out.
Uno que otro callo de hacha.
2 shiny black shellfish called callo de hacha.
Sí, el callo es una.
El callo is one of the species that, let's put it this way, it is one of the most expensive things you can catch.
Pero de las más caras.
It's named for its large black shell in the shape of an axe. Hacha means hatchet in Spanish. Pry the shells open, and inside is a large white scallop that's considered a delicacy.
We were surprised by the size of this type of callo. No one had ever found this shellfish in these areas. But they were enormous, huge, and they live in shallow and deep waters.
A few weeks later, when the shrimping boat caught another callo de hacha, they brought it to Belén. Now he was convinced this wasn't just a coincidence. There must be mountains of callo de hacha down there. And he got the feeling this could be big money.
Había un cierto riesgo.
There was a risk I could be wrong. Many fishermen told me that it wasn't true, that I was just making it up. And that bothered me.
Sí hay callo de hacha.
But I felt like, yes, there is callo de hacha.
Para mí sí existía.
For me, it did exist because it's very odd to catch callo de hacha with a net.
He knew the first thing he had to do was figure out just how much callo de hacha there was. And that was no small task. He'd have to reach the ocean floor, some 70 feet below the surface.
And so we started looking for a diver.
But no one in town knew how to dive this deep. Belén called around until he found a guy all the way out in Baja California.
There are people there who are experienced in this. They dive and fish for mollusks and callo de hacha.
The man was in his mid-40s. He'd been diving all his life, and he seemed up to the task.
¿Cuánto nos cobras por venir?
We asked him, how much will you charge us to do this job? And he said, how about we make a deal?
Si hay callo,
if there's callo, I won't charge you for the trip.
No les voy a cobrar.
But you'll give me a chance to fish some of it.
Pero si no hay nada,
if there's nothing, you'll pay for my trip there and back.
Okay, está bien.
So he came.
But Belén also wanted to keep this a secret.
Hay que ser discretos.
Let's be discreet so that this doesn't turn into complete chaos.
Todo con cuidado.
Everything must be done carefully. I said, you know what? If there are callo,
no digan nada.
Don't tell anyone.
If there was as much callo down there as Belén thought, he knew he had to keep it under control.
La idea de los pescadores es,
the way fishermen think is,
voy a sacar,
I'm just gonna fish because there will come a day when I can't fish anymore.
En que ya no pueda ir a pescar. Mi cuñado subió su lancha.
My brother-in-law got on the boat and then the diver got on and he set up his air compressor.
Es una máquina de gasolina.
It's a machine that uses gasoline. It pumps.
This guy didn't have a tank of oxygen or a wetsuit. He'd built his own equipment, an old air compressor that sputtered like a lawnmower and pumped oxygen through a plastic hose into a diving mask. In blue jeans and white rubber boots, he dove off the side of the boat with a large mesh sack. The other men waited. An hour passed.
Ándale que cuando llegó la sorpresa.
And when the diver came up, the surprise. He had 100 pounds of callo.
Le digo, ¿cómo vistes?
I said to him, what did it look like down there?
Están sentados ustedes en una mina de oro.
You all are sitting on a mine of gold, he says.
Donde te pares, hay callo.
Wherever you step, there's callo.
Ay, Dios de mi vida, dije yo.
The men had stumbled upon a massive colony of shellfish just off the town shore that covered a stretch of the ocean floor 30 miles long and a mile wide. It was worth millions of dollars. In the evening, the men met up in secret at the home of Belén's brother-in-law, where they hid their catch inside 2 large coolers.
Unos callos así enormes.
There were these enormous callos and I grabbed one and I ate it.
Abre la otra.
I ate another one. And
por eso tengo colesterol.
That's why I have high cholesterol.
The large coins of tender, white meat tasted slightly salty and sweet. And they were so fresh, they practically melted in his mouth.
Una de las especies.
They were the finest callo de hacha that you could find.
Now, Belén needed some way to protect the callo, and he knew he couldn't do it on his own. So the next day, he got in his green pickup truck and drove to the federal fishing authorities 2 hours away in Mazatlan. He walked into the large office building, carrying the cooler filled with his deep-sea treasure, and asked to speak to a director.
Este es el callo de hacha que hay en Tecapán.
I said, this is the callo de hacha that's in
Se
Tecapán.
quedó.
And he was shocked.
Y esto no es...
And that's from just one boat, I said. We haven't said anything no one besides us knows. That's why we came here to see you.
¿Qué es lo que queremos?
What do we want?
Que no se salga de control.
That this doesn't get out of control.
He needed the authorities to step in, to issue permits for local fishermen only, and to impose quotas, limiting how much each person could catch in a day. And he knew it could work, not just because he was a fisherman, he was also a biologist.
No nada más sabía capturarlos.
Well, I didn't just know how to catch them and sell them. No.
As one of 9 siblings, Belén was the first in his family to go to college, to study fish biology.
De ahí fue...
That's when I became interested in studying something to protect where we live,
donde vivíamos.
to take care of it, and to teach the fishermen to protect this resource.
At the meeting, authorities assured Belén they'd look into it. And he walked away thinking he'd gotten the ball rolling on a plan. Now, he just had to keep this under wraps for a little longer. The problem was he'd already agreed to let the diver from Baja fish callo. So the next day, Belén's brother-in-law and the diver spent all morning pulling up callo.
Venía un pescador.
A fisherman paddled over, and he found them fishing, and he saw all the callo they had.
Turns out, a bunch of people on shore had seen them. And now they watched as the diver jumped off the side of the lone fiberglass boat and came back up with bag after bag of shellfish.
Y los pescadores somos muy comunicativos.
And as fishermen, we like to talk. So he went back to Teacapan and told everyone what he saw.
By the time the diver's boat made it back to shore, all the fishermen in town were there waiting to see it for themselves.
Y yo le dije, ¿saben qué? Pues esto ya...
I said, that's it.
Ya tronó la bomba, ya...
The bomb's gone off. What are we going to do?
When we return, it's callo de hacha season, and everyone in Teacapan wants a piece of the action. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Snap Judgment, the Mother Nature episode. In the seaside town of Teacapan, where fisherman Belén Delgado, he's just discovered millions of dollars worth of an expensive shellfish called callo de hacha. But in a small town like this, secrets don't stay secret for long. Snap Judgment.
By the time the diver's boat made it back to shore, all the fishermen in town were there waiting to see it for themselves.
Y yo le dije, ¿saben qué? Pues esto ya...
I said, that's it.
Ya tronó la bomba, ya...
The bomb's gone off. What are we going to do?
Almost immediately, everyone in town, some of whom had never fished in their lives, teachers, politicians, ranchers, bought boats and hired divers. And men who didn't know how to dive were signing up for the job. There was money to be made, and everyone wanted in.
Había una persona, doctor.
There was a doctor, a good friend of the fishermen. He bought 3 boats. He didn't even need the money.
Y me dio mucho coraje.
It made me so mad, so angry to see this type of person take advantage, and they could give a damn.
Before the fishing authorities could do anything, more and more boats were out on the water, collecting hundreds of pounds of shellfish each day. And almost overnight, the town came back to life. People who were used to earning $10 a day were now earning $100 or more, selling their catch on the black market to vendors for fancy restaurants up and down the Pacific coast.
Vamos a decirlo que había mucho dinero.
Let's just say there was a lot of money. People bought cars and as much beer as they wanted.
Había buenas bodas, había buenas fiestas.
They had big weddings and parties. If they saw you walking by, they just offer you a plate of callo de hacha, which is something we never ate. And now we could eat all we wanted.
Pues nos sentimos orgullosos, grandes.
We felt proud. We felt really important because during this time, the economy of Tlacopan, I tell you, grew by 1,000%.
Al 1000%.
Belén started fishing too. And since the authorities still hadn't stepped in, he decided to set a quota for himself.
Tenía 4 embarcaciones.
I had 4 boats. I sent in 2. I didn't want to send in more boats because I didn't want to overfish the area. I was doing it on my own to say we can regulate ourselves. We don't have to destroy ourselves or destroy this resource.
Hay que poner un ejemplo.
I wanted to set an example.
Out of all the boats in town, just 3 sat unused, lying on the beach, and 2 of them were Belén's.
Mucha gente, no, mándalas y mándalas, espérate.
Everyone's like, send them all out. And I was like, no, wait.
Qué tonto estás.
A lot of people probably thought you're so stupid.
¿Qué estás haciendo?
What are you doing? There's money to be made.
2 months had passed since the discovery of callo de hacha, when researchers who'd studied the size of the colony came to present their findings. Some 300 fishermen in their white rubber boots and baseball caps gathered at the town's boardwalk to hear them talk.
Se les dijo que
The researchers said that the colony of callo, if taken care of, had the potential to last us 10 years.
de 10 años.
10 years.
10 años.
But Belén knew that at the rate they were going, it wasn't going to last half that. He decided to stand up and speak.
Señores, ya hay que
Gentlemen, we have to take care of this shellfish. We have to limit how much we catch.
capturas.
What do we gain by fishing 200 pounds each if they're not going to give us a good price?
Van a pagar barato.
Let's only fish 100 pounds per boat so they pay us a higher price and the callo will last longer.
He knew other places in Mexico use self-imposed quotas to protect their fish populations.
Decían muchos, no.
A lot of them said, no.
No.
Why use quotas? If we can fish 200 pounds, why would we fish less? Many
Lo
laughed.
vamos a acabar.
I said, we're going to wipe them out.
It was hard enough dealing with the local fishermen. And then outsiders started pouring in from hours away.
Gente de fuera.
People from other cities, from Chametla to Mazatlan,
Chametla de Mazatlán empezaron.
they started to come with their boats.
Se hizo un relajo, vino las...
It was mayhem. TV reporters came and they looked for us and asked what, where, and how. Is it true?
Los espera un tesoro en las profundidades del mar, el cual le llaman oro blanco.
The headlines called it white gold fever, or the cocaine of the sea. The story of the tiny town with an unbelievable fortune spread across the country.
Todo mundo hablaba de Tlacopan.
The entire world was talking about Tlacopan.
Tlacopan,
Tlacopan, a vibrant town, a blessed town.
elogiado.
The number of boats doubled and then tripled. Soon, there were close to 300. The locals tried to chase them off, and fistfights broke out. That's when the pirates started.
Los pescadores llegaban.
The fishermen would come.
Pescadores piratas, vamos
They
a
were
decir.
pirate fishermen. They would come and fish in the middle of the night.
The pirates launched their boats from miles away so no one could see them entering at Tlacopan's beach. Then they'd speed off into the dark with their catch.
En ese momento llamé a...
At that moment, I called the fishermen to a meeting to look for a way to keep more outsiders from coming in. And you know what a few of them told me?
Oye, dice,
There's enough for everyone. They can come.
para todo el mundo que venga.
That's what they said.
Me enojé mucho con mi propia gente.
I was so mad with my own people.
No quisieron entender.
They just didn't want to understand.
Y esos pescadores
We were able to keep the prices steady, but those fishermen from the outside sold it cheap and kept undercutting our prices.
With prices so low, now everyone had to fish even more callo, just to earn the same amount of money as before, and the scuba divers had to dive much deeper.
Porque se acabó el callo de la...
Because there was no more callo in the shallow water, the further down they went, the more callo they found.
Y se tuvo la primera desgracia.
And that's when we had our first tragedy. A diver went so deep that he got the bends.
Se descompresionó.
To save the scuba diver, the closest hyperbaric chamber was 2 hours away and the town had no ambulance. Belén grabbed the keys to his truck.
Súbete.
Get in.
Me lo llevé a
I drove him to
Escuinapa.
Escuinapa. I called ahead. The ambulances are waiting for him. I helped him in. He managed to make it.
Sí alcanzó a llegar.
But other divers were not so lucky. Many died from the bends. In one case, the hose attached to a homemade air compressor burst while a man was underwater.
Cuando jalaron a uno.
There wasn't any movement on his line. And when they pulled him up, he was already dead. They brought back his body in the boat, and honestly, it was a scary thing to see.
Nos asustamos mucho de ver eso.
Now, there was an even bigger fear that more divers could die.
7 fallecieron por la necedad de la gente de aquí.
7 divers wound up dying for us because we hired them. The moment came when how do you say?
Como se dice,
I almost threw in the towel.
casi tiro la toalla.
Nothing could stop the white gold fever. Not the authorities, not the promise of more money, or even death.
De hecho, dormía.
Actually, I would go to sleep and wake up thinking about this.
Había una preocupación.
I was filled with anxiety.
Pesaba mucho porque tenía mis trabajadores.
I was really worried about my workers.
He was thinking about the men he hired to take out his boats and fish. They were missing out on making money from the callo.
Pero estoy mal por no dejarlos trabajar.
Am I wrong for not letting him work?
One morning, after sending out just 2 of his boats, Belén stood on the beach and looked at the hundreds of other boats out on the water, all fishing callo. He walked over to the 2 boats he'd kept back. They'd been lying belly up in the sun this whole time. And he thought about what to do.
¿Sabes qué? Esto no va a tener un final feliz.
This is not going to have a happy ending. There's not going to be any more callo.
Porque el último va a ser.
Well, whatever. Let's finish this because the last guy in the water is going to miss out.
Contraté buzos.
I hired some divers, I got my workers, and I sent out my last 2 boats.
Ahora sí, vámonos.
Let's go.
Vámonos, sí, todas al agua.
Everyone in the water.
Sí me sentí que fallé.
I felt that I failed.
Pero cuando fueron a pescar,
But when they went out to fish and they brought a good amount of callo de hacha,
creo que me sentí mejor.
I think I felt better.
Esto tenía que pasar.
This had to happen.
Mis trabajadores están contentos.
My
Están
workers were
felices,
happy.
Las familias están felices.
Their families were happy.
Yo también tengo que estarlo.
I guess I also have to be happy.
By now, the price for callo had sunk even lower. But with all 4 of his boats working, there was still money to be made.
5 toneladas.
5 tons.
No, perdón, 7
No,
toneladas.
excuse me. 7 tons.
De callo de hacha.
Imagine 7 tons of callo de hacha multiplied by 200 boats.
Era un mundo.
It was a world.
Ese año era el cumpleaños.
That year, my daughter turned 15.
Yo dije, no, vámonos.
So I said, come on,
Vámonos.
let's go. Let's get those callos. We're going to give my daughter a quinceañera.
Y de hecho, aquí en la casa esta.
Actually, we threw the party here in the backyard. We opened the back gate and welcomed anyone who wanted to come. Everybody came.
Estaba súper lleno.
The place was super full.
There were like 400 guests, tables crammed around the dance floor, and at each one was a centerpiece, made out of callo de hacha shells. It was Belén's idea, a plastic swan head with shells glued to either side, like wings.
Sí, de hecho,
In fact, it was one of the last good moments.
etapas buenas.
That night, Belén danced and partied until the sun rose the next day.
Llegó el momento de que pues también me sentí culpable de lo mismo.
I felt guilty about what
Me
happened.
dieron ganas de olvidarme de todo
I wanted to forget
y
everything
seguir así como estaban.
and go back to the way things were.
Sí me olvidaba un día,
I
pero
would
otro día
forget
volvía
for a
para
day
atrás.
and then the next it would all come back.
La frustración de
It was
que
so
la gente no
frustrating
entendiera.
that no one had understood.
Qué barbaridad.
It was just so foolish.
colony of callo de hacha in Teacapan was fished out in less than a year and a half. The fishermen had tossed so many callo shells and guts over the side of the boats that it poisoned the water, killing off whatever callo were left. Fishing in Teacapan is nearly non-existent now, and Belén is retired, but he still takes his boat out to where the colony of callo de hacha used to be.
And do you think that there could be callo in this area after 15 years?
Yo creo que debe de haber ahorita.
I think there
Ya
must
debe
be
de
callo now.
haber callos. Vamos a
Let's
suponer
assume
que
they
hay
aren't
callo grande,
big, but there must be some.
Pero debe de haber.
There must be.
Mira, peces.
Thank you, Belén, and everyone in Teacapan for sharing this story with us. The story is produced in collaboration with FERN, the Food and Environmental Reporting Network, a nonprofit investigative journalism outlet. Big thanks to Brent Cunningham and Sam Fomarts at FERN. And FERN has a new podcast. It's called Hot Farm. Over 4 episodes, host Eve Abrams talks to farmers across the Midwest about the reality of climate change and what they are doing or could be doing to fight it. You can find Hot Farm wherever you get your podcast. The voice acting for this piece was done by Leonel Garza. The original score for this story was by Renzo Gorio. It was edited by Nancy Lopez with production support from John Facile. The story was produced and reported by Esther Honig.
Reap So is a production of the Food and Environment Reporting Network. Our executive producers are Theodore Ross, Tom Laskaway, and Brent Cunningham. Our sound engineer is Lauren Newson. I'm your host, Teresa Katsourelis. Special thanks to Snap Judgement for their work on this episode. To listen to more Snap stories, check them out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more independent, nonprofit reporting at the intersection of food and the environment, check us out at www.thefern.org.